The human arrived quietly on the alien planet of Elithra. He stepped down from his small ship, which shimmered faintly in the soft purple light of the sky. The Elithrans watched from their tall towers, their glowing eyes curious but wary. Humans were rare on this planet. Most aliens had never seen one in person. They were strange, fragile, and unpredictable. But this human, Ethan, seemed different. There was a calm in him, something the aliens could not name, but it made them pause. Among the watchers was Lyra, a young alien girl who had never smiled. She was small, even for her age, with silver blue skin and eyes that reflected the sky. She had a condition that made her emotions intense, confusing, and sometimes overwhelming. Other children did not understand her. They avoided her, whispered behind her back, and sometimes mocked her when she reacted too strongly. Lyra had learned early that the world could be harsh, and she had built walls around her heart. She was alone, except for a few quiet moments. She shared with the gentle hum of nature around her. Ethan knelt beside her, careful not to frighten her. "I'm here for you, Lyra," he said softly, and his voice carried warmth, patience, and something she had never felt before. Understanding. Lyra tilted her head, uncertain. Humans were strange, yes, but there was no threat in this one. Somehow she knew he meant what he said. The other aliens watched in silence. Some were skeptical, some curious, but all were drawn to the unusual. Bond forming in front of them, the human did not rush. He observed her carefully, learning her patterns, her fears, and the small things that made her happy. He noticed how she flinched when someone raised their voice, how she loved the soft hum of water running over rocks, how the smallest touch could make her tremble. Most aliens did not care to notice such things, thinking them insignificant or odd. But Ethan cared. He had a human way of seeing people, not just their outward appearance but their hearts. Lyra did not speak at first. She had grown used to people ignoring her, misunderstanding her, or worse, trying to fix her as if she were broken. But Ethan did not rush, and she felt a strange sense of safety near him. He brought her small gifts each day, a soft, glowing crystal, a leaf-shaped musical instrument, and tiny books filled with pictures. Each gift was simple, but each carried a message. He saw her, he valued her, he believed in her. One morning, he placed the leaf-shaped instrument near her hands. Lyra's fingers trembled as she touched it. A soft, clear note floated into the air. For the first time in her life, she felt the sound inside her chest. It was not frightening. It was not confusing. It was beautiful. She laughed, a quiet, shaky laugh at first, then louder, pure and unrestrained. The sound was like a bell in the silent hearts of the watching aliens. Many had never heard a child laugh like that. Some felt a strange pull in their own hearts, as if the laughter touched something buried deep inside them. Ethan smiled. "See? You have music inside you. You always did," he said gently. Lyra blinked, unsure what to say. No one had ever told her she had anything beautiful inside her. She had been told to hide, to control, to be quiet. But this human, he believed in her. He gave her permission to be herself, fully and without fear. The crowd of Elithrans murmured among themselves. Some whispered that humans were foolish, weak, and fragile. Some wondered why this human bothered with a child no one else cared for. But all of them were watching closely now. They could see the change in Lyra's small body, the light in her eyes, and the way she lifted her hands to the music, as if she wanted to hold the world. Even Governor Thalron, who rarely left his high tower and rarely showed any emotion, felt something stir within him. He was used to power, control, and order, but something about this scene, the human kneeling beside the small alien child, the laughter, the music, tugged at a place in him he had long ignored. It made him uneasy, but in a good way, like a door opening to a room he had forgotten existed. Ethan extended his hand to Lyra. "Let's explore this together," he said. And for the first time, Lyra reached for someone without fear. She placed her small hand in his, and something unspoken passed between them, a bond of trust, a spark of hope, and the beginning of a journey that would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone on Elithra. Days passed slowly, but something was changing. Lyra, the young alien girl, was no longer hiding as much as before. She still kept her distance from the other children, who sometimes watched her from afar and whispered, but when Ethan came near, she did not turn away. The human had become like a quiet light in her lonely world. Ethan spent hours sitting near her, not demanding, not pushing, simply being present. He noticed every small thing that made her feel safe. If a loud voice startled her, he lowered his own. If her hands shook with nervousness, he placed small objects in them so she could focus. If she grew restless, he walked with her in the gardens, where the alien flowers hummed in the breeze. The Illithrans watched in silence. To them, it seemed strange. They believed Lyra was too different to ever belong, too fragile to survive their structured society. Many thought the human was wasting his time. But Ethan did not care what they thought. He cared only for the small girl who for the first time seemed to trust someone. One evening, Ethan brought with him the little musical instrument again. Its body was shaped like a leaf, with delicate strings that glowed faintly under the soft moonlight of Elithra's twin moons. He placed it in front of Lyra. Her large, uncertain eyes flickered with hesitation. She had thrown the instrument once before when fear had overtaken her, but Ethan's presence was steady now, like an anchor in a storm. "Try again," Ethan said gently. "Only if you want to." Her small fingers touched one glowing string. A single note filled the air, clear and gentle, almost like a drop of water falling into a still pond. She froze. Ethan nodded encouragingly. She pressed another string. Another note rang out, different but beautiful in its own way. Slowly, she pressed again and again until a fragile tune formed. Something stirred in Lyra's heart. It was as if the sound was reaching into a place she had kept hidden all her life. For so long she had felt her emotions were too much, too loud, too heavy, too confusing. But now, the notes seemed to give her emotions shape, turning her storms into something beautiful. Then it happened. She laughed. It was soft at first, like a breeze. But soon it grew, fuller, brighter, echoing across the courtyard. Her laughter was pure and unrestrained, and it startled everyone who heard it. Many Illithrans had never heard Lyra laugh. Some didn't believe she could. But now her joy was alive, spilling into the world for the very first time. Ethan's eyes grew wet, though he smiled. "That's it," he whispered. "That's you, Lyra. That's your heart speaking." The aliens around them murmured in disbelief. Some shook their heads, insisting it was nothing, just a moment. Others could not look away, their eyes fixed on the glowing child who suddenly seemed to shine brighter than the stars above. For in that moment, Lyra was not the strange, fragile girl they once pitied. She was radiant, alive, and full of joy. But joy was not something Elithra understood easily. Their society valued order, control, and calm. Emotions were seen as dangerous, even shameful if they were too strong. Governor Thalrin, watching from the high balcony, frowned deeply. To him, this human was stirring things best left untouched. "It will not last," he told himself. "The child will break again." Yet when he looked closer, he could not deny the truth in front of his eyes. Lyra was not breaking. She was glowing. That night, Lyra sat beside Ethan longer than ever before. Her head rested against his arm as he played gentle notes on the leaf-shaped instrument. She did not speak, but her silence was no longer heavy with fear. It was calm, safe, and warm. For the first time in her young life, she felt she was not a burden. She felt seen. As the stars spread across Elithra's night sky, Ethan whispered to her, "You are not broken, Lyra. You are music waiting to be heard." She closed her eyes, letting the words sink into the deepest part of her heart. And there, for the first time, hope began to grow. Not everyone was happy with what they saw. While Lyra's laughter had touched the hearts of some, others whispered that it was dangerous. Illithrans were taught to control emotions, to hide what was too strong, to never let feelings rule their lives. To them, a child who laughed so freely, who danced with sound and feeling, was a sign of chaos. Governor Thalrin was the loudest voice of doubt. From his high chamber, he spoke to his advisors. His face was stern, his voice deep. This human is filling the child with false hope. He does not understand our ways. The girl is weak, and weakness spreads like fire. Indulgence will not save her, it will destroy her. His advisors nodded, though a few looked uncertain. The truth was, even they had felt something when Lyra laughed, but they would never admit it aloud. Thalrin's word was law, and to question him was dangerous. Meanwhile, Ethan continued his visits. He did not care for the governor's disapproval. All he cared for was Lyra. Each day, he encouraged her, guided her hands on the glowing instrument, or simply walked beside her in the quiet gardens. He believed she was stronger than anyone realized. But one day the struggle came. It happened during a small gathering in the city square. Ethan had brought Lyra with him, hoping to show her that her music could be shared. A crowd gathered, curious, waiting to see what the human and the strange child would do. Lyra held the instrument tightly, her fingers trembling, her breath quick. Ethan knelt beside her. "You're safe," he whispered. "Play if you want. I'm right here." For a moment, Lyra managed a soft tune. The notes floated into the air, gentle and fragile. But then someone in the crowd laughed, not kindly but mockingly. "Look at her," a young alien boy shouted. "She is clumsy. She cannot even hold it right." Others snickered. The cruel sound pierced Lyra's heart like a blade. Her hands shook harder. The instrument slipped from her fingers and clattered to the ground. A sharp cry escaped her lips, and then she screamed, long, broken, and full of fear. Her body shook violently, her eyes wide with panic. She covered her ears as if trying to block out the world. The crowd gasped, some with pity, others with smugness, whispering that the governor had been right all along. Ethan moved quickly, kneeling and wrapping his arms around her. "Shh. You're okay, Lyra," he murmured softly, rocking her gently as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "I've got you. I'm not leaving. It's all right." But Lyra wept into his chest, trembling as though her very soul was breaking apart. The crowd began to scatter, some shaking their heads, others muttering that the human's efforts had failed. Governor Thalrin, watching from the balcony, felt grim satisfaction. "See?" he told himself. "This is what happens when you feed a weak flame. It burns out." Yet those closest to Ethan and Lyra saw something different. They saw a human who did not let go, even when the child screamed and cried. They saw his hands steady, his voice calm, his patience unshaken. They saw love where there should have been frustration, and in that moment, a seed of doubt grew inside them. Doubt about their own beliefs, about the governor's harsh words, and about the true strength of the little girl. When Lyra's sobs finally slowed, Ethan wiped the tears from her silver-blue cheeks. "It's all right," he whispered. "You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be like anyone else. You are Lyra, and that is enough." Lyra looked up at him with trembling eyes. Her heart ached with shame, with fear, with the memory of cruel laughter. But in Ethan's steady gaze, she saw something she had never known. He was not disappointed. He did not walk away. He stayed. That night, when everyone else had gone, Lyra clung to him tightly, as if afraid he might disappear. "Don't leave me," she whispered in a fragile voice. Ethan smiled gently and pressed her small hand to his chest. "I won't. Not ever." And though the city believed the human had failed, Lyra knew a different truth. For the first time in her life, she believed someone would never give up on her. And that belief, though small and fragile, was the beginning of strength. The days after Lyra's collapse were heavy. The memory of her screams still echoed in the city square. Many Illithrans whispered that it had been proof of the governor's warnings. "The child is unstable," they said. "The human's kindness only makes her weaker." But Ethan never believed that. He stayed close to Lyra, more patient than ever. He did not push her to perform again. Instead, he walked with her through gardens, listened to the hum of alien streams, and told her stories of Earth. He spoke of human children who fell but stood again, of people who turned their pain into art, and of how sometimes broken pieces made the most beautiful patterns. Lyra listened quietly. Her small hands often clutched his sleeve, as if afraid he would disappear. She was still shaken, but she no longer feared Ethan's gaze. He had seen her at her worst and had not left. That truth gave her a kind of courage she had never known. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, Ethan brought out the small leaf-shaped instrument once again. Lyra tensed at first, but Ethan shook his head gently. "Not to play," he said softly. "Just to listen." He strummed a slow, soothing melody. The notes rose like the glow of fireflies, soft and warm in the twilight air. Then Ethan did something different. He stood up and began to move his body to the rhythm. It was not graceful. Humans were not dancers in the Elithran sense, but it was simple, gentle, and free. His feet shifted, his arms stretched, and his head swayed to the tune. He looked almost foolish, but his smile was wide, his joy unhidden. Lyra blinked at him. "Why, are you moving like that?" she asked, her voice small but curious. "Because music is not only for the ears," Ethan answered, still swaying. "It is for the whole body. When we move to it, we let the music carry our feelings. We let it lift us." Lyra frowned, uncertain. Elithrans rarely danced. To them, movement was meant for rituals or training, not joy. But Ethan's movements had no rules, no structure. They were wild, but gentle, awkward, but full of life. Something in her chest stirred as she watched. Ethan extended his hand. "Would you like to try?" Lyra shook her head quickly. Fear wrapped around her heart. She remembered the laughter of the crowd, the way they mocked her clumsy hands. I can't," she whispered. "You don't have to be perfect," Ethan said kindly. "You just have to be you." The words sank into her. She stared at his hand for a long time, her fingers trembling. Finally, as if drawn by something stronger than her fear, she placed her hand in his. Ethan's grip was warm and steady. He guided her to stand. At first, her movements were stiff. Her steps were small, almost invisible. She felt every eye that had once judged her, every cruel word whispered behind her back. But Ethan hummed softly, his voice carrying with the melody. One step and another. That's all it takes. Lyra took a step, then another. Slowly, she let the music guide her feet. Her arms moved slightly, awkward at first, then more freely. She stumbled, but Ethan caught her with a gentle laugh. "See? Even falling can be part of the dance." Something inside Lyra broke open. She twirled once, clumsily, but when she looked up, Ethan was smiling at her as if she had just created the most beautiful movement in the universe. His eyes shone with pride, not pity. For the first time, she felt the freedom to move without shame. And then it happened. Lyra began to dance. Her body was untrained, her steps uneven, but her joy was raw and honest. She spun, lifted her arms, and let her laughter ring out with the music. Her silver-blue skin glowed in the fading light, as if the stars themselves had chosen to shine through her. The aliens who watched from a distance fell silent. They had never seen such a thing. Not ritual, not performance, but pure expression. It was strange, wild, and beautiful. Some felt their own eyes sting with tears they did not understand. Ethan whispered as he watched her. "You are magic, Lyra. You always were." High above, in the governor's balcony, Thalrin's heart stirred against his will. He frowned, but his chest tightened in a way he could not control. It was not weakness he saw below. It was strength. Fragile, yes, but shining brighter than any command he had ever given. That night, as Lyra collapsed into laughter and breathless joy, Ethan held her hands and whispered, "This is only the beginning." And in her glowing eyes, the first sparks of true belief appeared, belief not only in him but in herself. The day of the grand festival arrived. Elithra's capital city was alive with colors and sound. Tall banners waved from crystal towers, glowing lights floated in the air, and the people gathered in the great square to celebrate the turning of the twin suns. For most, it was a time of ritual and tradition, a time to honor the order that had shaped their world for centuries. But this year, something different was about to happen. At the edge of the square, Ethan stood with Lyra. She wore a simple white robe, its fabric glowing faintly under the twin suns. Her small hands trembled as she looked at the crowd, thousands of Elithrans, their glowing eyes fixed upon her. She remembered their laughter, their whispers, the way they once saw her as broken. Fear rose in her chest like a storm. Ethan knelt beside her, his voice calm. "Remember, Lyra, you are not here to prove them wrong. You are here to show them who you are, that's all." Her lips quivered. "What if I fall?" "Then you rise again," Ethan said with a smile. "Even falling can be part of the dance." The music began. Soft, glowing instruments filled the air with a melody that shimmered like starlight. The crowd hushed. All eyes turned to the small child standing in the center. Lyra froze for a moment, her body rigid with fear. Then Ethan, standing just at the edge, lifted his hand to his heart, his. His eyes told her everything. "I believe in you." Lyra took a breath. Slowly, she stepped forward. Her movements were small at first, awkward and uncertain. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some tilted their heads, confused, expecting failure. But then her arms lifted, her feet found rhythm, and her body began to flow with the music. The more she moved, the lighter she became. She spun, stumbled, and spun again. But each time she laughed, and the laughter turned her stumbles into something beautiful. Her silver-blue skin caught the light, glowing like the moons above. Joy poured out of her like water from a fountain, honest and unrestrained. The square fell silent. No one could look away. They had seen dancers before, trained, perfect, graceful. But they had never seen anything like this, a child dancing not with skill, but with her soul. Every step, every spin, every laugh was alive with meaning. At the edge, Ethan's heart swelled. His eyes blurred with tears, but his smile never left his face. Lyra was not the girl who hid in shadows anymore. She was the star of the square. Then came the moment no one expected. Lyra stopped dancing. Breathing heavily, she walked to the edge of the stage where Ethan had placed something earlier, a small flower from Earth. Its petals glowed softly, a gift he had given her when she first believed she was special. Lyra picked it up, turned to the highest balcony, and looked directly at Governor Thalron. The governor stiffened. The crowd turned their eyes to him, curious. Slowly, Lyra walked forward, her small hands clutching the glowing flower. Step by step. She climbed the platform until she stood before the most powerful leader of Elithra. Her hands trembled, but her eyes shone with courage. She held out the flower. The governor stared at it. For a long moment, the square was silent. He looked at the child, then at the fragile gift in her hands. Something inside him cracked. He saw not weakness, not disorder, but strength. Strength born from pain. Hope rising from brokenness. He saw the human's patience reflected in the girl's courage. And then, before all of Elithra, Governor Thalron's eyes filled with tears. They slid down his stern face, glimmering in the sunlight. The crowd gasped. Their governor, the man who had always been stone, was weeping. Lyra placed the flower in his hands. "This is for you," she said softly. The governor's fingers closed, around the glowing petals. He tried to speak, but his voice broke. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of true emotion, raw, unpolished, yet powerful. The crowd erupted, not with laughter, not with scorn, but with applause that shook the air. They cheered for Lyra, for the human, for the moment that shattered everything they thought they knew about weakness and strength. And as the festival lights glowed brighter, Ethan looked at Lyra, his heart bursting with pride. She had not only danced with joy, she had changed a world. The festival ended, but the memory of that moment stayed alive in every heart. The image of Governor Thalron weeping with a glowing flower in his hand spread through the city like fire. For many Illithrans, it was the first time they had seen their leader moved by something so human, so fragile, yet so powerful. Children, who once mocked Lyra, now looked at her with wide eyes, not with scorn but with wonder. They whispered about the way she danced, about her laughter that rang like music, and about how even the governor himself could not hold back his tears. Some of them tried to copy her movements in secret, stumbling and laughing in ways their parents had never seen. The adults, too, could not ignore what had happened. Illithra was a society built on order, control, and silence of strong feelings. Yet one small child had stood in front of them and reminded them that joy was not weakness. It was strength. Many began to question the old teachings, asking themselves if they had been blind all along. Ethan continued to walk beside Lyra. Wherever she went, others followed. Her courage gave them permission to try what they had once hidden. For the first time, laughter echoed in the streets more freely, and music could be heard not just in rituals but in homes. Lyra had become a living symbol, not of weakness, but of change. Governor Thalron sat alone in his chamber many nights, staring at the flower she had given him. Its glow never faded, and neither did the memory of her trembling hands placing it in his own. He could still feel the warmth of her trust. The governor, who once believed emotion was dangerous, now found himself wondering if true strength was not in control, but in compassion. At last, he sent for Ethan. The human entered the governor's hall quietly, bowing with respect but without fear. Thalron studied him for a long time before speaking. His voice was lower, softer than before. You have done something no Illithran ever dared. You have changed not only a child, but an entire people. Ethan shook his head humbly. No, he said. Lyra already carried the light inside her. All I did was help her see it. The governor's eyes narrowed, but not in anger. It was as though he was trying to understand something beyond words. And you? How is it that a fragile human could see what none of us did? Ethan smiled faintly. Because humans know what it means to break. We know what it means to fall, to fail, to hurt, and we also know that beauty grows in the cracks if someone believes enough to let it shine. The hall was silent. Thalron turned away, his hand resting on the glowing flower. For the first time, he felt the weight of his own people's suffering. The silent struggles, the hidden tears, the laughter they had buried for the sake of control. Lyra had opened his eyes, but the human had given him the words to understand it. The governor nodded slowly. Perhaps it is time Illithra learns to see as humans do. Word spread quickly. Changes began, small at first, but strong. New schools encouraged children to play, to laugh, to express themselves without shame. Music was no longer bound to rituals. It became a part of daily life. Families began to share stories of joy and pain openly. And at the heart of it all was Lyra, the once lonely child who now danced freely, leading others with her courage. Some resisted, of course. There were those who still clung to the old ways, who whispered that too much feeling would destroy them. But even they could not deny what they had seen with their own eyes: the governor's tears, the girl's dance, and the human's gift. Ethan walked through the streets one evening, watching children laugh as they tried to copy Lyra's steps. He felt a deep peace in his heart. This was why he had come, to bring hope where there was none. Yet he knew his time here was not forever. One day he would return to Earth. That night, as Lyra twirled in the courtyard, she stopped suddenly and looked at him. "You won't leave soon, will you?" she asked, her voice trembling with worry. Ethan knelt, brushing a strand of silver-blue hair from her face. "Not yet," he said gently. And even when I do, I will never truly leave you. Because now, Lyra, your joy belongs to the whole world. It will never fade. Lyra's eyes shone with tears, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of hope. For she understood now that her dance was no longer just for herself. It was for everyone. And so, the once quiet streets of Elithra began to fill with music, with laughter, with the sound of a people rediscovering their hearts, all because one human saw a child no one else would see, and gave her the gift of belief. Years passed on Elithra, and the little girl who once trembled at every sound grew into a young woman whose laughter lit the streets. Lyra was no longer the child who hid in corners, afraid of whispers and stares. She had become a teacher, one who showed other children that joy was not weakness, that their feelings were not chains, but wings. In the city squares where she once stood trembling, she now danced boldly. Her movements were no longer clumsy, but graceful, full of life and meaning. Children gathered around her, imitating her steps, giggling as they stumbled and clapping when they found rhythm. To them, Lyra was not strange. She was their guide, their friend, their light. Adults, too, came to watch her. They brought their families, their neighbors, their doubts, and slowly their hearts softened. Some who had once mocked her now bowed their heads when she passed. Others wept quietly as they watched their own children laugh freely, something they had never dared to allow before. Lyra's courage had broken the silence of generations, and no one could deny the beauty of it. Ethan remained on Elithra for many years, walking always beside her. But as time went on, he began to feel the call of his own home. Earth needed him, just as Elithra had once needed him. One quiet evening, under the glow of the twin moons, he sat with Lyra in the garden where it had all begun. The leaf-shaped instrument lay between them, still glowing softly, its strings carrying the memory of their first connection. "Lyra," Ethan said gently, "my time here is ending." Her eyes widened, her chest tightening. "You're leaving?" He nodded, sadness in his smile. "Yes, but I am not leaving you empty. Look at what you have become. Look at the joy you have given to this world. You don't need me to guide you anymore. Now it is your turn to guide others." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not tears of fear. She took his hand and pressed it against her heart. "You were the first who saw me," she whispered. "You gave me my first smile, my first dance. I don't know if I can be strong without you." Ethan's eyes glistened. "You don't have to be me. You only have to be Lyra, and that is more than enough."